So I think it's probably about time that we give Elon something to defend himself with. He's surrounded by just a bit too much horror.
What you looking at, bitch?
I knew that if I was going to add shooting to my game, it would require some tweaks to the standard assets code that already drives my player's movement. As it's set up currently, Elon will always turn towards the direction of his velocity, which is fine for the standard player movement in the game. However, if I'm wanting to add combat to the game, the player ideally needs to strafe left and right and always look in the direction that the camera is facing. At the end of the day, the player needs to see where they're shooting. I added some code that would switch between the two different locomotion blend trees, one for the current standard movement and another for the combat movement, which we'll be adding strafing to, and all of the other animations associated with movement whilst Elon is aiming his weapon. I wanted the switch in between these two movement states to be triggered by holding down the right mouse button, so I decided to add some additional code just to listen to the mouse input and toggle a boolean which would drive the transition in and out of the state, which currently I've decided to call combat mode. So now that we had the basis for combat movement down, it was time to start looking for some shooting animations. I wanted to set this up with as few animations as possible, so I decided that the best route to achieve this would be to use Mecanim's animation layers and avatar masks so that I could blend upper and lower body animations together. This means that I'll only need an aiming and a firing animation which can play on the upper body of Elon whilst the lower body is still being driven by the current locomotion animations. I'd purchased a weapons pack on the asset store many moons and deleted projects ago, which had a handgun model that I thought was decent enough to use for now. It's all starting to come together at this point, except the fact that Elon doesn't really look like he's aiming where he should be right now.
You smoke a lot? Most of the time.
I decided to try and fix this problem using IK solvers. This way I could rotate Elon's spine joints so that they would always be aiming for the center of the screen, which is where the crosshairs will eventually be once I get those in as well. I wasn't exactly dancing with joy about the idea of wrestling with Mecanim's IK system. To be honest, the thought of it was starting to send contraction signals down to my anal sphincter muscles. But not to worry, Unity Asset Store to the rescue again, as that's when I remembered I'd also sank my hard-earned cheddar into an asset called Final IK by Rootmotion. This has a far more robust IK system than Unity offers out of the box, so this is going to save me loads and loads of time, and to be honest, I'm always happy when an impulse buy pays off down the line. And in this case, I'm going to be using the aim IK component, which redirects bones in a chain like a character's spine towards a target direction, and from what I can see in the Rootmotion tutorials, it's tailored towards weapon aiming, so this is going to be exactly what we want. A bit of fiddling with some shoddy code to update the aim IK target position, and things were looking good. The solution for updating the aim IK is fairly straightforward. I start by emitting a raycast from the center point of the camera. When this hits a collider, it updates a target transform value of the aim IK. To handle moving in and out of the IK blend, I simply just listen to the state of the animator. If the animator is in combat mode, then the IK weight goes to full weight, and when it exits combat mode, it'll tween back to 0 so that it doesn't interfere with the standard locomotion animations anymore. To counteract this snapping of the raycast hit updating the target transform, I just added some code to interpolate between these positions so Elon now switches between targets more smoothly. There are still some issues with the IK snapping back a bit too abruptly, but this will do for now as we're just going for the basics and I just want to keep pushing forward and getting features in the game. After all, it's all about minimum viable product. So time to move on to the fun stuff. I grabbed a gunshot sound from freesound.org, so for now I could play a one-shot audio every time the handgun fires to ramp up that game feel. I also thought it'd be nice to have some muzzle flash effects to upgrade the action element, and I nearly purchased a weapon effects pack on the trusty old asset store, but I decided to give my bank account a break and make my own. And to be honest, I'm glad that I did. The particle system in Unity is actually pretty straightforward and easy to use, and it didn't take me that long to get a half-decent looking muzzle flash myself. It's not going to win any awards for weapon effects, but again, it'll do for now because you guessed it. Even I'm not cringe enough to run that jingle twice in one video. Don't worry, you're safe for now. In the end, I decided that the muzzle flash was a bit on the large side, so I made it much smaller, and I also added a point light which enables at the end of the barrel of the gun when it's fired to light up Elon and the surrounding area and really sell that flash. I'll probably come back at some point and add some variation to these muzzle flashes so they aren't as extreme as this every shot. So now it was time to actually make our weapon destroy things, as currently it was all bark and no bite. I created a simple interface called damageable. This would set the base requirements for anything in the game that can be destroyed using weapons. When classes use this interface, they'll need to have health value. This required destroy method is where all of the unique code can be placed to handle whatever happens to the object on 0 health. This could be anything as simple as triggering the object's active state to false and playing a particle effect in its position, or even have an enemy character playing a death animation. To test out this functionality, I created a grid of cubes in the scene and attached this temporary cube script which had a health of 100. The destroy method simply deactivates the game object in the scene. A few points to note. Currently the code handling the weapon always fires a raycast from exactly the same point in exactly the same direction, giving the weapon needlepoint accuracy from any distance no matter what the player is doing. I'd like to come back to this at some point and add some more functionality like recoil and a variable accuracy that's more dependent on the player's speed and time spent aiming, but you guessed it, this is going to have to do for now. Don't forget to check out my other videos on starting this project if you haven't already, and